Many Cook County residents are reeling today from a whopping property tax bill that came out late and much higher than expected. Chicago's south and west sides are seeing some of the biggest increases.
My property taxes went up 75.86%. And so
Richard Townsell of North Lawndale has a friend who saw his jump 237%.
My wife and I, we had a budget meeting last week as we were looking at this. You know, does that mean maybe we don't take the vacation we thought we were going to take?
Thank you all for coming.
A frustration that this weekend led to this bill burning, led by the Lawndale Christian Development Corporation, which he is executive director.
So I want to first of all start this video by giving a shout out to Black Conservative Perspective here on YouTube. He was the first to cover this story. We found it through him. I know he recently shouted us out, so make sure you go subscribe to him, tell him I sent you, you know the deal. But that said, this is a story that I also wanted to cover because to me, it is just the most obvious example ever of what happens when you vote for Democrats. I know sometimes I overcomplicate these political issues. This one is not complicated. It's the stereotype, actually, of what happens. So you vote for them. They raise your taxes. They then proceed to give that tax money to a bunch of illegal aliens, criminals, vagrants, drug addicts, etc. And then inevitably, when they run out of that money, because after all, they're investing in a bunch of people who will never manage to pay them back, you're never going to get those dividends in return, they proceed to blame the Republicans, Trump, the rich people, the 1%, and then turn around by thanking you for your service to illegal aliens, the average taxpayer, by, of course, raising your taxes again. And then it's this endless spiral where if we just raise taxes a little more, you know, maybe we would have a utopia. And every time they do it, the situation just gets worse. Well, that is exactly apparently what is now happening in the city of Chicago, where homeowners across the city, but particularly, and this is very important to point out, the poorest, oftentimes blackest neighborhoods are facing record increases in their property taxes after the city, as you could expect, is facing massive budgetary shortfalls for very obvious reasons. And I just want people to remember that when Democrats say tax the rich and we say they don't really mean the rich, we mean they don't really mean the rich, right? This is a prime example of exactly how taxing the rich, quote unquote, as a slogan always means raising taxes for everyone. And secondly, of course, when I say that Democrat governments are literally bankrupting themselves because of all the free stuff they're giving to illegal aliens, that's not a MAGA right-wing talking point. That is like actually what is happening, and we'll show you the proof of that here today. So what a wonderful political party they have. But nonetheless, we'll get into the story, guys. It is just, I don't want to say insane because I'm not surprised, right? The only people surprised are those, of course, who, I guess believe these slogans, right? New York City, by the way, have fun with this very soon. Zoran's just going to tax the rich. Oh, really? Is he? Yeah, have fun with that. Anyways, that said, we'll get into it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And that said, okay, so here is reporting from the Chicago Tribune, for instance. Chicago homeowners are being walloped with a record property tax hike, with some of the city's poorest neighborhoods absorbing the steepest increases, even as downtown office owners see their bills fall, according to new data from the Cook County Treasurer's Office. So again, this is the very disconnect we're talking about, right? They're going to tax the rich and wealthy. Oh, but what's really happening? For the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, they're hiking up, they're raising the property taxes, while ironically lowering the property tax for the downtown office owners who have more money to pay. In other words, what is that called? A regressive tax system. Brandon Johnson goes on all the time to talk about how he's so amazing and he cares about the billionaires and all this garbage. And yet here's the actual result time and time again that you actually see. Yeah. If you're a poor person, if you're just a working, even middle class person who falls for this garbage, I don't know what to tell you. But I guess to an extent, people get what they vote for. What else can we say? An analysis from a Cook County Treasurer Maria Papa's office found that the median property tax bill for a Chicago homeowner jumped 16% since last year. That is insane. 16% in a single year, guys. The largest percentage increase in at least 30 years. That might be the largest in history. I've never heard of anywhere with 16% increase. But anyways, the surge follows similar spikes in Cook County's north and south suburbs over the last 2 years and complicates the job of the Chicago City Council as it considers tax hikes to help close a historic budget gap. So in other words, guys, what is actually happening? The city, because of how much they're giving to illegals and spending on dumb stuff and corruption and all this nonsense, is in a massive budgetary shortfall. They're in debt. So instead of thinking to themselves, right, instead of taking accountability as the leaders, hey, maybe we screwed up, maybe we should re-examine the way we're spending money, they're like, no. Our commitment to illegal aliens is strong. After all, we're Democrats. Therefore, we're just going to raise taxes on poor people. Yeah, good job, you know? But this is the party that day in and day out is going to lecture us about billionaires. That said, let's take a listen here to this local news report that will tell us more about the situation and how some of the residents are reacting. So take a listen.
Well, people have gathered here tonight at Harmony Community Church here in Lawndale as they're trying to light the way to fairness with this bonfire and discussion tonight. Many homeowners across Chicago receiving a hefty property tax increase in the mail, and they're all wondering where that money is going.
How can you maintain your home if your taxes are constantly going up?
Homeowners in Lawndale are searching for answers together tonight about their property tax hikes. Community leaders partnered with the Lawndale Christian Development Corporation to host this bonfire, allowing neighbors to discuss their options. One man says he received a bill this week that was $977 more than what he paid last year.
Now I want to cover a topic that's at the core of the rearrangement of our economic and political world order. In fact, one billionaire has said, quote, if somebody's pointing a gun at you, you need that copper to shoot back. Now, the US and China are currently battling over mineral supply chains and technology supremacy, and you can see just how, when looking at these strategies, that both superpowers are taking. On one hand, Trump is using tariffs and deregulation to begin the process of realigning mining and securing resources on US soil, while the CCP is using their near monopoly status, scale, and reserves to their advantage. Now, the sponsor of today's video is the owner of the Mahuba Hill Copper Project and past producing mine in the state of Nevada, right here in the USA, and they are Giant Mining Corp. Ticker symbol is BFGFF, so you can learn more and do your own research. And they may be primed to be a top opportunity right now. Why? Because ever since President Trump's inauguration in January 2025, his administration has aggressively pursued policies to secure U.S. mineral independence, with copper emerging as a flashpoint in escalating tensions with China. Copper's vital for defense and AI infrastructure in the current state underscores America's vulnerability to foreign dominance, particularly in China's control over global refining. Now, back in February, the Trump administration initiated an investigation into U.S. copper imports and classifying the nation's dependence on foreign suppliers as a national security risk. Well, that investigation has concluded in June, and it identified a significant U.S. trade deficit and overcapacity from state-subsidized Chinese copper production, leading to a July presidential proclamation that imposed 50% tariffs on semi-finished copper products, including wires and cables. And some of you might have remembered that very announcement. Now, in October, President Trump approved the Ambler Road project in Alaska, unlocking access to rich copper and zinc deposits and facilitating the permitting of more than 1,700 mining claims. We're also seeing action from presidential agencies. Hopefully you can start to notice a pattern here. One of the world's most famous mining billionaires has said that, quote, the world needs astronomical amounts of copper over the next 20 years. He's repeatedly said there is no rational price for copper when the metal is essential. Now, effective August 1st, the copper sector, in my view, entered a ground floor seismic level opportunity, marking the beginning of a transformative new phase for the entire industry. What we've been seeing is the very first chance, in my view, to be a part of the rebirth of the American copper mining business. And it's already been done before, folks. Historic underground mines at the Mahuba Hill Project produced copper, tin, and silver from the early 1900s to the 1950s, including 2.8 million pounds of copper, 184 ounces of silver, 5,800 ounces of gold, and 21,000 pounds of tin. That's why, with all of these factors, with the infrastructure being ready, and of course, the new political approach by the United States government, I encourage you to do your own homework and research on giant mining. This is not financial advice, but feel free to go learn more for yourself.
Tax increase is tied to a TIF that I have no idea why. Ogden-Pulaski TIF is collecting money from our neighbors in our streets, but we're not being notified for what or why it's in the bill.
The group discussed a number of solutions for the issue, including an effort to propose new policy, which would be modeled after California's Prop 13. That would limit property taxes to 1% of assessed value, with annual increases capped at 2%. Homeowners are also frustrated because they feel like they're not seeing the tax hikes lead to notable investment in their neighborhoods.
Well, gee, you don't say. Of course it's not leading to investment in your neighborhood. Because the money, oftentimes in Democrat states, either gets squandered to random NGOs, nonprofit groups to fix homelessness or fix the roads, or construction contractors who, ironically, feels like never actually do any work, right? You notice that pattern? And then secondly, oftentimes are, buying out the Democrat politician's campaign or something like that. That's number one. So, yeah, I mean, you're surprised that your tax increases are not going to investment in your community? You voted Democrat. That's what happens, number one. Number two, though, okay? I'd also point this out about California's Prop 13, because I, as many of you know, am a native resident of Los Angeles. That's where I lived for the entire first 18 years of my life. And I will tell you this firsthand, that basically what that was, as you heard, right, was a ballot proposition that California overwhelmingly voted for obvious reasons, saying you cannot raise the property taxes every year more than 1 or 2%. They basically have to freeze the property tax rate as it is. And you know what happened? As you could expect, because LA County, for instance, still needed to pay for illegal alien garbage, they basically ignored it and did it anyway, right? That's your democracy for you. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in Chicago, right? They'll say, okay, fine, we'll follow the proposition. They just never do. And no one ever holds them accountable, right? You never see a judge step in and say that, if people voted for it, it's the law, you should follow it. No, it only goes one way. So, I wish these residents genuinely the best of luck, but not sure they're going to be so lucky after all with that. But anyways, let's keep listening.
There's been a divestment in this community for the most part, but it seems like now that people have found an interest in reclaiming the neighborhood, now it's like we're being taxed for prosperity.
Cook County.
Oh, that's also interesting. So he says he feels like he's seen a divestment in the neighborhood. The taxes have gone up, but we feel like we're getting less back from the city. Yeah, and I wonder where that money is going. We'll answer that question in a second. Well, first, let's just keep listening. But, I want you to think about what may have happened in this country the past couple of years that could cause money that was meant for, say, the inner city to no longer go to the inner city and go to a different Democrat pet project. I don't know. Comment your thoughts down below. You want to predict? Go ahead.
Treasurer Maria Pappas also spoke earlier today on the tax bills while at a Rainbow Push event. She says there are new avenues for homeowners to pay these bills at their own pace.
You do not have to pay your bill on December 15th. Did you hear that? You don't have to pay it. Let me tell you why. We went to Springfield last year and set up a payment plan.
Pappas says you could go online on December 16th and find payment plans for up to 13 months. That's welcome news to these homeowners, but they still want some clarity on those tax hikes.
We understand utilities are going up and things of that nature, but it's a valuation issue. Like we don't have schools we need, there's economics that aren't here, but we're being charged to pay for economics in other people's communities.
Now, some people here tell us they haven't even received.
In other people's communities. I wonder whose communities that could be. But yeah, no, don't worry, guys. Now you can pay it on a payment plan, right? You want to pay your property tax through Klarna? Sure, you'll pay it at interest and end up paying more. And at the end, it's like, no, the whole point is the property tax bill needs to come down, and it's still not, even if you spread out the payment. But of course, right? That's the Democrat Band-Aid on a solution as usual. You could just lower the taxes. You could actually just balance the city's budget, Shouldn't be all that hard for reasons we'll talk about later. But if you want an idea of, what might be driving this, let's see. The long-awaited second installment of the Cook County property tax bills was mailed to owners on Friday and is due December 15th. Across the county, Democrats care so much about affordability, by the way. They're the party currently campaigning. Donald Trump has failed on affordability and healthcare, and we know what we're doing. But do you ever notice everything Democrats touch, they just make more expensive, right? Whether it's the economy, whether it's the healthcare system, and then Republicans get into power and try to fix their way out of the mess, and then Democrats blame them for their own. And I'm just going to point that out, pretty basic take, but you understand. Across the county, residential and commercial property owners are being billed a total of $19.2 billion. Oh, $19.2 billion. But the city's in a deficit. What's going on here, right? a nearly 5% increase from last year. But the burden is falling unequally. Audrey Pierce last year paid about $3,300 in property taxes for the Greystone 3 flat that she owned on Christina Avenue here in North Lawndale since 2000. So last year she paid $3,300. On Thursday night, she logged onto the treasurer's website to discover her new annual bill is $7,000. It more than doubled, guys. $7,000 all of a sudden for a home you've been in for like 25 years by now. Of course, you don't pay that, as you know how property taxes work, right? Paying rent to the government. You don't pay that, they'll evict you, right? How dare you not give money to our illegal alien pet project? We demand your $7,000 right now. But then, of course, right, the regressive nature of this, as we mentioned, the collective tax bills for commercial properties dropped by $129 million, driven by plunging property values. So in other words, right, a bunch of the people downtown, the people with money are leaving Chicago. That's why those property values are plunging due to Democrat mismanagement. They have the money to leave. So essentially what's happening here, right? The rich people, the business people, they have the capacity to leave. They up and left. And then the city's like, oh, shoot, we lost our tax base. Okay, just tax the poor people. Again, New York, this is exactly what's going to happen to you. It's already kind of what's happened to you, even before Mamdani. So, have fun with that. But anyways, with that said, again, to answer this question that we've been kind of hinting at the entire time, where's the money going, right? Why is the city of Chicago in such a budget deficit? I wonder if this could have anything to do with it. Anyone want to guess?
Well, 34 aldermen voted for the $51 million. It did not come out without a lot of controversy, especially from some black residents who say the money should go towards Chicago residents who have been neglected for years.
Very much committed to a revenue stream or revenue streams that ensure that we are dealing with the crises of those who are unhoused in the city of Chicago, while also making sure that there's room for those that we are welcoming.
We need to allocate some of this money for our black children, for the black community.
$51 million for migrants brought some loud and vocal opposition from the public, to the point where police had to escort people out of the city council meeting several times. Mayor Brandon Johnson asked for a 2-minute breather.
We want to make sure that we can continue to conduct the business of the people.
$15,000 in food stamps and $5,000 cash money monthly. Every month they're getting that. Yes, and they're getting 6 months free rent. But this was the first time I heard about it. Now I've heard it's 2 years free rent, getting Section 8, first prioritized before the citizens.
So the Venezuelan migrants that are coming in here, they are getting 6 months free rent, $15,000 in food stamps, and on a credit card, $5,000. Cash. Oh my goodness. How do the people in Chicago feel about that?
Well, people are angry because there's a lot of people, that need help with Medicaid and food stamps, and they get rejected.
Tell me about the people that you've seen on the streets collecting clothes.
By my house, there's a Walgreens. There's a lot of families that go stand by the door with a pamphlet saying they need money and food. And they're Venezuelans getting money. And then they go in the bus and don't pay. Go in the trains, don't pay. And they're not getting in trouble for none of the wrong things they're doing.
Yeah, gee, I really wonder why the city of Chicago might be currently, am I getting this number right? $38 billion in debt? It's a big mystery. I wonder, by the way, why the credit score, right, the credit grade of that city in the past few years, when it was rising, it was getting better, all of a sudden it did a 180 and just earlier this year got downgraded. I mean, let's listen to what Brandon Johnson had to say about that. Again, it's a really big mystery, guys, isn't it?
Imagine that the Wall Street ratings agencies watched today's proceedings and are perhaps even watching now. What would you say to them as they weigh whether to downgrade the city's credit, which would, of course, cost the city a great deal of money?
Look, we've had 2 credit score upgrades since I've been in office, right? We do know that, the sins of previous administrations, left billions of dollars of debt and left out of here with junk status. We don't want to go back to that, right? We're working to make sure that there are structural shifts within our budget, which 70% of this budget responds to the structural, component, which I think is responsible. I'll just say this, it's important too, and Jill and Annette and Jason and I talk about this.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's kind of hard to blame past administrations, is it not? When you just admitted earlier on into your term, your city was getting credit upgrades, which means either you were in a good situation or heck, you were handed a decent enough situation. Yet now suddenly what changed? Again, I wonder what fundamental citywide and nationwide policy could have affected the fact that Chicago now is in a budgetary shortfall. This is what I want people to understand, is that in many cases, it actually is about the illegals, right? We've discussed this a lot of times in state politics, whether it's California, for instance, their Medi-Cal, which is basically their Medicaid, right? Medi-Cal program is actually bankrupt. Like, that's a real thing. It is now run out of money because of the illegals that they were paying for. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's a myth. That's actually what happened, right? Or when we had the discussion about EBT, food stamps, and federal welfare benefits, and broke down how non-citizen households disproportionately were receiving it at very high rates. And then it's like, okay, I wonder where the national debt exploded from so much, right? I'm not saying there's not any other factors, but let's be real about this. Is it exactly a coincidence that ever since America basically opened its borders to mass migration, we were told, oh, they improved the economy, right? You should see the GDP go up. We should see more prosperity because that's how libertarian economics is supposed to work. And then in turn, everything gets worse. The debt explodes. You don't see that economic growth. I wonder what that's all about. It's because we're importing a bunch of dependents, right? Disproportionately. That's who's coming into the country, dependents. Now, there's some who actually go and live functional lives, right? And actually contribute to society. But you need to understand it's a game of numbers, right? When there's more illegals in a city that are taking money than illegals that are putting money in, and by the way, wealthy people are leaving as well, etc. You do the math. Where do you think the trend line is going to go there? Do you think the city is going to have more money or less money? That's why I say again, you look at this, you combine this with all the other pet projects on illegals. The story is pretty simple. Now, don't get me wrong. There's other aspects, I'm sure, right? Woke DEI programs, maybe some funding there. I think that a lot of Democrat states, when they got the COVID stimulus money, spent like drunken sailors. Now they're broke and now they're blaming Trump for it. That's another real trend. But I'm sorry, do not discount this issue of the illegals, okay? Always go back to that. You wonder what's wrong with this, what's wrong with an issue in this country? It's not a bad guess to say immigration policy, whether it's any major issue you're looking at right now, right? Crime, taxes, finances, economy, whatever it is, the driving on the roads. A lot of it is actually tied to immigration. Make no mistake about that. But anyways, there you have it on one hand. I want to contrast that, however, with the current state of the property tax debate in my state now currently that I live in nowadays, which is Florida. Because, again, the side-by-side contrast of just Democrat mismanagement versus good state management, okay? What's the debate over here right now? As they're raising property taxes by 16%, and in some cases, as you saw, just more than doubling the property tax, guess what the debate is right now? Well, we're talking about an amendment right now in Florida that would go on the ballot in 2026 to abolish the property tax for primary homeownership altogether. Because essentially our state is in so much of a surplus, we don't know what to do with the money. So take a listen as Ron DeSantis basically, again, explains for you, very simple, I know, but the difference between voting for Democrats and putting them in charge and I'll say good Republicans, because there are corrupt Republicans, but this is an example of good Republicans. Take a listen.
We got to put it on the ballot, and the voters have to approve it. It's a constitutional issue in Florida. It's not something the state derives revenue for. It's a local issue. We're trying to focus on Florida homeowners and their primary resident. People that have Airbnbs or whatever, that's separate. Yeah. But your personal home, you shouldn't rent it from the government. You should own it. And, you're paying taxes for 50 years, but even for young families, it's become very difficult across this country to make ends meet. Wouldn't it be great if they were able to have home ownership without having the burden of property tax that? So that's coming to a ballot near you in November of 2026, and we need 60% of Florida voters to do it. And I think it's going to be very popular, but it's also something that's not an easy bar to reach when you have an election like that. Our state now has millions of more residents than New York State does, and yet New York State's budget is more than twice the size of the budget of the state of Florida. Their roads aren't better than ours. Their education's not better than ours. Their services aren't better than ours. I certainly wouldn't want to go to the DMV, in New York, especially when Mendami gets in. It's interesting. New York City has 8 million people, and this is even before Mendami takes over the grocery stores. Their budget's bigger than Florida's budget with 23.5 million people. And so we're able to do that at half the cost, and yet major initiatives for infrastructure acceleration, environmental restoration, education, you name it, we've done it. Debt. Take all the debt that Florida's had for 180 years. Just since I've been governor, we've retired half of it on my watch. And we now have the lowest per capita debt of any place in the United States, AAA credit rating, all that. Of course, that's what we have.
Yeah, again, guys, it's really that simple. We don't need to overcomplicate it. I'm sure some leftists will come and try to make some nerdy intellectual argument about, well, actually, if you look at this expense or this thing versus that, it's like, no, actually, you have 2 cities and 2 states ultimately, like Florida has a bunch of major cities, right? Of major size, major status in the United States. Florida's not exactly Wyoming, okay, here, folks. And one place is talking about doubling people's property tax because we don't have enough money. The other state is talking about, we have so much money in surplus, let's give a tax break to people. Do we even need the property tax at all? That's the side by side. Please understand that, right? That's, by the way, what also happens when your political ideology is, hey, let's allow people to build stuff and do stuff with their lives, and let's incentivize that. Let's incentivize growth and, individual enterprise, etc. Versus, let's create a bunch of dependents, right? And let's make it our kind of open society policy. We're going to take care of the dependents of the world. Yeah. Who do you think has more money in the end? Who do you think is going to get more raising taxes? Who do you think is going to have lower taxes? It's just that simple. So, just keep this in mind, guys. I don't know what else to say, right? That's just Democrats for you. Not willing to listen to any excuses about how New York really needs the money because they have more roads to maintain. Okay, well, their roads suck. Chicago as well, right? Oh, but the education system. Oh, yeah, the education system in Chicago. Whoa, so amazing, right? It's like, come on, give me a freaking break. No, you're giving a bunch of money to illegals and criminals and vagrants, etc. That's all there is to it. It's that simple. It's that simple, okay? So anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.